Hi, Mary, and welcome to the Natural Birth Podcast. How are you?
Thank you, Anna. I'm very well, thank you, and it's good to be here today.
You're brilliant to have you here today. Excited to
Thank you.
hear about your home birth with your little baba. Do you want to take us back to, becoming pregnant and take us on that journey of deciding to have a home birth, if that was always kind of obvious for you?
Yes. So our conception was not intended, but also not avoided. So I was open. We were both open. So yeah, it was just one of those surprises that come along the way, and we actually my partner and I had lived in Australia for 7 years, and then we
Mm.
decided to move back to the UK because my family live here, and I'm really close to my family. And we were thinking I'm of that age where I wanted to have children. And it just, I've been listening to lots of birth stories and things like that. I wanted to already before I conceived, probably a couple of years before I conceived, I was listening to births, and because I wanted to reprogram it, my conditioned fear of birth, the
Mm.
typical Western model of it's painful and horrible, and you just have to endure it, and there's nothing nice about it apart from a baby at the end, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I already was in that space, so we wanted to come back and be around family, so we had that community and support. Um, so yeah,
Mm.
then we conceived, and it was funny timing because my cousin uh, had conceived in around the same time, so she was 2 months prior to us, and we all had a family party um, for Halloween, and she announced that she was pregnant, and we were like, oh, that's so wonderful, they really wanted a child, and it's, yeah, really great news. And then my brother and his partner, before we went to the party, they said, guys, we're pregnant. They were trying as well, and we were like, oh my god, this is amazing. But they're like, we've only just found out, and days, we
Yeah.
don't want to tell the extended family, just you
Yeah.
guys. So I was like, oh my goodness. So then we go to the party, and then my cousin's like, I'm pregnant. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe this. And I was pregnant but didn't know. And
Oh.
so yeah, so then we go to Australia for Christmas. To some of my partner, although he's English, some of his family live there, so we went out there to visit them and do a bit of traveling and stuff for 3 months. And so on the flight, um, I'm quite a peaceful sort of person. I'm not a real like fitness active sort of person, but I moved so much on the flight, and I feel that it was my intuition telling me to keep that blood flow around and keep moving.
Yeah.
I've never done so much standing yoga on a flight ever before, and I've traveled lots between England and Australia.
Mm.
Um, so we get to Australia, and I think, oh, my period's meant to arrive any day, like today, And then I knew that jet lag can delay your period, and I was googling like how long could jet lag delay your period for, and yeah, and so we decided to take a test, and I just went down to a public loo and on the local foreshore. We were staying with my partner's family, so I just wanted to have some space to do it by ourselves.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then I hadn't even peed on the stick, and it was like positive already, and I was like trying not to look and I was like fumbling, like, oh no, I've seen it, just quickly put it in my bag. And my partner was down by the water's edge, and I sat down, I was like, oh Carl, I think I've seen it already. And he's like, Mary, I know, because he saw a dolphin as soon as he sat down. He saw a dolphin, and he felt that that was a sign.
Oh,
um
cute.
yeah,
My heart.
so I was like so yeah, so we looked at the test, and it was very, very positive. So it was just like, oh, I just didn't,
Mm.
yeah, didn't know how to take that in. I suppose I was like crying but excited, and also I felt so happy that it was happening at the same time as my brother and my cousin,
Oh,
because my
wow.
cousin and I had spoken about having babies at the same time when we
Mhm.
were older, and I kind of knew that she would always be ready before me. And yeah, and so um having it all happen together at the same time, the universe just wanted it to happen that way. It just felt really, really magical. So I couldn't wait to tell everybody back at home. And yeah, we just walked along the promenade, and my partner's mum passed away like 10 plus years ago, 13 years, something like that. And she comes to us, or we feel she comes to us in like butterflies and dragonflies and also ospreys as well. She loved ospreys. And there was this, we were just walking along the promenade, and this dolphin that showed up for Carl just followed us along the promenade as well. And then there was a bird sort of hovering. We were like, you know, is that an osprey? And it flew away, and Carl sort of said, "Oh, come back if you are." And it came back, and it just flew right between our heads, like about 2 meters above our heads, and it just felt that she was there with us. Yeah, so it just felt very connected. It wasn't like, oh God, we're pregnant, what do we do, you know? It just felt, yeah, very connected, and like we had her there with us, which was very special. So that was, yeah, that was finding out. So I did my first trimester in Australia, staying with my partner's family, which was kind of challenging because, you know, I'd never been pregnant before. I didn't know how I was going to be physically, and I'm a really private person, so it was quite hard not really having any personal space to just let it unfold. You know, people ask me
Mm.
how you are all the time, and you're constantly having to come up in your head to answer that
Mm.
question, you know. But it wasn't, you know, it was good because it obviously I wasn't working, so it forced me to rest,
Mm.
which was really brilliant because I slept like 4 to 6 hours a day in the daytime as well as 12 hours at night, so I was very, very tired.
Yes, so common, and this is the time where women are supposed to hide it from the world, when they
Mm,
usually feel the worst, right? And can't potentially a lot of people feel like they can't tell work, right? And
yes.
hiding it at work and oh, I wish we lived in a world that supported women
Mm,
having the
yeah,
new generation, and like as soon as you are pregnant you're allowed to have pay and stay at home and rest for that first month instead of the opposite.
absolutely.
Like you're supposed to
Yes,
hide
yeah.
it. It's just absolutely backwards.
Mm, yeah, and I'm grateful that I set up, because I work for myself, so I've set up that space to um, allow rest, times of rest if I need it.
Mm.
So yeah, because I create jewelry on a commission basis. So when I give my lead time, I give more time so I can create a space of whatever comes up, you can allow that. And so
Yeah.
obviously that left the space for us to go to Australia for 3 months. So I had the space to just be in whatever was going to show up, you know, which I didn't fully expect was going to be a pregnancy. But yeah,
Amazing. Wow.
yes, that was good timing. So
So when you did find out, so you knew already you're going to have a home birth. Did you see a midwife in Australia at all, or did you just wait until you got back to the UK, or?
yeah, so in Australia you go through the GP. So I just kind of followed. I knew I wanted a home birth, because I've experienced kind of strong anxiety in the past, and which I've, you know, overcome well, but still dabbles here and there. Of health anxiety. So I worry, you know, lack of ability in my body, not fully trusting that it can get over things and that kind of thing. So I knew that if I went with a hospital, like with the NHS, because I was going to come back and be in the UK for the rest of the pregnancy and birth, I knew that if I went through the hospital system, it would just ruin the experience because everything is just obviously really medicalized, and everything is like just fear based, I notice, you know. And I hadn't really heard a positive birth story from being in the hospital. Maybe one or two, but most of them were not. So I just thought, knowing that I'm quite sensitive in nature, and yeah, have that sort of old patterns that can come up about fear of your body and not believing in it, I knew that I had to have something different, had to choose a different form of care. So yeah, so when I was in Australia, I didn't really know what to do. I just thought, well, when you're pregnant, I don't know what you do. So we just went to the doctor, and it was really sweet. My partner said to me before I went in, he said, just remember that they are there for you, they are working for you, you don't have
Mm.
to, you know, do anything for them, they're there for you. So that was a really great reminder. So when I went in, this lady was not yeah, not very pleasant. She just was like, okay, great, you're pregnant. So we need to do this urine sample. I need to do a swab of your vagina. I need to do this, that, and the. And I was like, oh, whoa, I've never been pregnant before. I don't know, why do you need to take a swab inside me? I've got a new baby. I don't really want anything up inside me, you know. Um, and she was like, oh, because you could have some bacteria up there that could cause an infection when you give birth. So we want to know now so you
That
can have
does not
antibiotics.
make any sense.
Right. So,
Makes no
mm,
sense. Like you're in your early first trimester. You're
yeah,
miles
yes,
away from giving birth.
exactly. So I just thought, but if you took antibiotics, so if I had the bacteria,
Oh
this bacteria,
God.
whatever it was, and I took antibiotics and then
Oh
it went away,
God.
it could come back. So why are we looking
Yeah.
now? Anyway, so I turned
Oh,
that
and the
down.
overuse of
Um,
antibiotics. Like, please, people
mm,
listening to this, I know you're all very crunchy, but like, be so
yeah.
careful with when, like, use only antibiotics when you really need it. Like, and
Mm,
question the prophylactic ones. Like, yes, sometimes there's a place for that, but like, question it when it's not like
mm,
actually truly needed, you know?
right. So yeah, so I did have an experience with antibiotics after this. So they did a blood. I just went for the blood test. I didn't have a urine sample or anything. She just confirmed I was pregnant, and then yeah, said she just wanted to do all this stuff, and I was like, I'm just gonna think about it and just gonna look into all these things because I don't know what they are and what they mean, and you're not really
Mm,
explaining it. So that was yeah a deflating experience. Like first
mm,
time you've been pregnant, the first time you were seeing a professional about it, you think they'd be very supportive and all that, and it just wasn't that way. So it's not obviously it's kind of what I expected, and I was quite prepared as well for a bit of disappointment. So that was okay.
mm,
Yeah, so my blood test showed up white blood cells, which indicated that I had an infection, and so they did a urine sample, and it was a UTI. So I've never had a UTI before, and I know that you're more
mm.
susceptible in
Yeah,
pregnancy.
yeah,
So they said, because you're pregnant, we want to give you antibiotics. And I was like, I don't have any symptoms. So I wouldn't even know that I had this UTI. So I just said, I don't really want to take them unless it's absolutely necessary, because I don't know the risk of antibiotics with a tiny little baby. And yeah, so I go away. I've never had a UTI, so I don't know what to do with a UTI. So I just drank cranberry juice. I just looked it up on Google and just natural ways of healing. And yeah, and so we were traveling in a van at this point. So we went away over Christmas and traveled in a van. And yeah, I was just waiting all the time. And then the symptoms were coming on. So
mm,
then I felt anxious about it. So then I did take the
mm,
antibiotics because it was getting worse and worse.
yeah,
And when I spoke to the doctor after to get the antibiotics prescription, she said, well, you could have been drinking cranberry juice, you could have been da 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 da. And I was like, you could have told me that before I start, like before, here's
yeah,
some preventative measures that, aren't technically proven, whatever, but they could help.
yeah.
I wasn't told anything like that, which is frustrating, but obviously I appreciate they're
Mm.
a GP, so that's not their area of expertise. So,
It's not their area of
mm,
expertise, and it is a biomedical
mm,
model of care. They don't really prevent things. That's not what
yeah,
the healthcare system is not to keep you healthy. It's about,
mm,
treating usually symptoms of being ill, So
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not at all their genius zone.
Yeah. So I could have started, doing more natural things like the homeopathy and cranberry and the D-mannose and things like that. I could have started those when I didn't even have any symptoms and flushed it out quite easily, but because I didn't, and then the
Yeah.
symptoms started coming. Yeah. Anyway, so then I took the antibiotics, they didn't work. And
Oh,
then so I took another set of antibiotics of a different kind,
yeah.
and they did work, um,
Mm,
as far as I remember.
yeah.
So yeah, that was a bit crappy taking those, but they just said the doctor said I wouldn't prescribe you these if you weren't pregnant. It's just because you're pregnant that a UTI can like maybe interfere with the pregnancy and the
It
baby
can,
and stuff. So
yeah, I mean, it can irritate and cause miscarriage, right?
mm.
Yeah.
So he said, yeah, he would normally leave it without, but because of being pregnant. So I just went along with it. And I looked up the antibiotics, and they were like kind of, I can't remember which ones I took, but they were ones that were more safe for pregnancy, and
Yeah.
you know, so I
Yeah.
was just weighing up the positives and negatives there.
That's
So
it, that's always what you
yeah,
have to do. There's always a time and place for things when you do have things. Like this is obviously not
mm,
prophylactic, this is treating. And you have to
mhm,
weigh it up, like risks versus benefits. And
absolutely,
you did. And that's all we
yeah,
have to do all the time. It's just taking that
mm,
responsibility, which you did. And then sometimes
yeah.
we need the things and sometimes we don't. And
Absolutely. I
yeah.
did try the
Hmm.
natural way once I figured out there were things to do that were,
Hmm.
I didn't actually have any homeopathy at that point, but yeah, so I did try that. So, but
Yeah.
alas, no. So that's where the antibiotics came in to good use in that time. So I took a really good, there's a yeast, I forget the name of it, but I took a yeast that kind of lines the stomach when you take an antibiotic. I've forgotten what it's called, but and then I also took a really good probiotic afterwards. So I didn't have any stomach issues at all when I
Hmm.
was taking the antibiotics, and even though I took them for like 3 weeks or something in total.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so that was
That's
really
good.
good.
Yeah.
So that was, yeah, the first trimester I just, slept, like I said, like 4 to 6 hours a day and 12 hours a night.
Mm.
And just, I was kind of nauseous, but my symptoms weren't really bad. I would be, heaving a lot, like filling up the car with fuel, for example. I couldn't do that without retching, and it kind of made me laugh. Like it wasn't too bad. I wasn't being actually sick, so it was okay. But the nausea was, I couldn't like open the dishwasher or do, my nose was just so sensitive.
Mm.
So yeah, in the house that we were staying at, I had to remove any like chemical cleaning products and just replace it with essential oils sort of thing, or ones that are safe, that aren't going to
Isn't that
induce labor.
amazing, how we,
Yeah,
and really you should take heed of what it is that you really don't like in pregnancy, because it's probably not good for
mm,
you anyways. Like all the cleaning
absolutely.
products, right? They're so toxic.
Yeah,
And like if you want to
yeah.
consciously conceive, and go on that journey, like that's one of the things I recommend is like
Mm.
exchange it for essential oils and like natural things.
Yes, and that, because in our home that's what we do. We use only natural cleaners and stuff. So it was just really confronting having sitting in the toilet trying not to throw up whilst having a wee, because I could smell the stuff that was in there. So I just said, if it's okay, I've just made it a cleaner with like eucalyptus and stuff. It's just water and eucalyptus. It can clean everything. It's an air freshener, and just like put your things in once I've left, please. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So so symptoms wise was, that was it really. Just and then I think my iron was pretty low as well. So I think that's added to the tiredness too. But I just started taking a prenatal there, that was recommended by a naturopath friend. Yeah, so the doctors just, I don't really know what they kind of did. They just said, they just gave me the antibiotics and did the blood tests and stuff. So there wasn't much else there that was needed.
And then you got back to the
Um,
UK and you decided how to go about your birth. So did you go with the NHS?
no, so I I googled whilst I was in Australia, private midwives in Dorset where I am,
Hmm.
and there was like one, so I was like, okay, that's what I'll do then. So because I just knew, like I said, I just knew that I didn't want to give birth in a hospital, and I didn't want to leave it up to chance, um, because you can have home births here in Dorset, but the hospital that I would be home birthing with is 30 minutes away, 35, 40 minutes. So it's only if the team is available on the day, and they may or may not be. So I'm like, I don't want to leave that up to chance. This is a big day.
No,
So um,
absolutely. Very good. Very
yeah,
good.
so I decided to, and I wanted to know who was going to be at my birth as well. People's
Yeah,
energy is so, influential to you and makes an impact. So I wanted to make sure that I felt comfortable and safe with who was there. I just
definitely.
knew from listening to your podcast that,
Mm.
um, women give birth best where they feel safe. And for me, hospitals don't give off the energy of safety. For me, I feel unclean and icky and just want to get out when I'm in a hospital. I don't sort of
Mm.
associate them with health and well-being and new life, more sickness and death. So
Yeah.
yeah, it just seemed like a very foreign place to give birth, really. So yes, so I found a private midwife team. They're called the Wessex Midwives, Erica and Rachel, and they were NHS trained midwives and have done lots of experience in different countries and things like that. But again, like most um, like mainstream midwives, they get frustrated by the limitations of the system, so they went out private.
Hmm.
And yeah, immediately resonated with them. They were very busy at that time of year. It was July that my daughter was born, but yeah, they just said they could fit me in, which was amazing. So yeah, so I just spoke to them on the phone and just, yeah, like I said, immediately resonated. It's expensive having a private midwife in the UK, so it's
Mm.
£5,000, and it was a lot. It's a lot of money to anybody. um,
Yeah.
but I just thought, you know, a lot of people when they get married will spend at least 10 to 30,000 pounds,
Yep.
and that's effectively a party,
Yep.
right? So a birth is another type of party,
Yeah,
but
it's new
it's,
life
you know,
entering the earth, and like your first, especially your first birth, is definitely not
yes,
it's not a trial
not one to
run.
wing.
And I mean, it might be
Yeah.
your only, you never know. And like, I mean, it is a lot of money. And I'm not saying, obviously, for everyone that's not doable, but if
Mm.
it is, like, I definitely agree that I think it's worth spending the money on it.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%. It was the best investment of my life. It was just
Mm,
honestly priceless. The way I was treated, I
mm,
just wish I could give that to every new mother.
yeah.
um, because it just felt like how it should be. So all my appointments were at home. It was probably near the 20-week mark somewhere. Um, so yeah, so I went to the hospital for a scan, just to check everything was the 20-week scan. I was like, I'm happy to do that. I don't want to do lots of scans. I just want to, check the beginning and the middle, and then there's no reason why they should suddenly, you know, do something weird inside. So I went for that scan, and the lady was really lovely, and that was through the NHS. So did all the medical stuff like the scans, and yeah. So when I went for the scan, like I said, the lady was really lovely, and she couldn't. I think my daughter's head was really low, or her bum was really low, or something, and they couldn't get the full spinal measurement. So they said, just go and have a walk around. Everything else looks fine. Just we need to get this measurement. So I was like, okay. So I walked around, and nothing was changing. She was like, have a chocolate bar, and I was like, don't really want to.
Have a chocolate bar, really?
Yeah, have sugar to try and make
Yeah,
them
right.
go crazy in your wombs. I was
Oh
like, okay.
God. Yeah.
Um, so I just drank water and tried to jiggle a bit, and nothing happened. And then I had a different radiographer or sonographer, sorry, and she tried to use the scanning thing, basically like a scoop, to try and scoop the baby out of my pelvis, like she was behind my pelvic
Mm,
bone.
God. Like,
Um,
why is this?
and I was sort of going like this, like not going, oh, excuse me, that's don't do that, because you're in it and you're
Yeah.
so open and sensitive and everything and vulnerable, and you
Mm,
trust in these people to do their jobs properly and well, and I was making these noises like to try and show her that I was uncomfortable, and she just was like, right, she's just in there like try and flip and hook her out like a scoop of ice cream. I was like, that's not what that thing is for. And I was like, it's okay, I can come back tomorrow, I can come back a different day. Yeah, so, and she just pushed so hard. Like the other lady was really gentle, and I was like, that's just, what it's like in the system is like some people are really gentle and some people are really lovely and
yeah.
kind and caring, and some people are really
Not.
firm and just, yeah, not right. So
Well, and also it's like at the end of the day, I mean, I understand if you want to have a full anatomy scan, you want to have a full anatomy scan. But it's also like every time you do a scan, whether it's the early one
Mm,
or the anatomy one at 20 weeks, it's like, what's going to happen with that information? What are you going to do with it? Why is it
yeah.
important? What is
Mm,
important for you? Is it just to
right.
see the baby? Is it to actually know every limb is this and that? Because at the end of the day, we know that there is, you can see things that are not there, and you can also, a lot of times they also miss a lot of things that when the baby is
Things,
born, they
yeah.
didn't get. So it's not like it's an accurate science anyways at all.
Mm,
And it causes so much distress for so many women. And
mm,
so at the end of the day, it's like,
mm,
okay, so how important was that to get the last bit of that spine? Like, what would it have changed anything for you in that moment? Would you have
right.
had, you know what I mean? So it's also that, like,
Absolutely.
at the end of the day,
Mm,
also, if you go for a scan or whatever other test or whatever appointment, you can always stand up and leave. But
yeah.
when you're there, the power dynamic and your sensitivity as a
Yeah.
pregnant woman, like you are vulnerable and you're so
Mm,
susceptible for people's opinions, especially as you step into that hierarchical system.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree. And yeah, I hear what you're saying. And yeah, absolutely agree with everything. And it's for us, because it was to do with the spinal thing, was to do with like the fluid or something that could indicate possibly like defects, and it basically like because they couldn't see it. And
Yeah.
we did have the blood test in Australia that was like the harmony test or something, where they
Hmm.
check for the likelihood of any of those syndromes and things,
Hmm.
and everything came up low risk. And
Mm.
so I knew that she's likely fine. But yeah, for me, I think, well, for us, we didn't know how we'd feel if they were to have Down syndrome, for example, or something along those lines. So yeah, we really just I had no feeling, because I'm like, I'm not in it, and my partner was the same. Like some people say, like, yep, I would totally terminate the pregnancy if they had Down syndrome, and other, vice versa. So whereas we just had no, I just don't know because I'm not in it. So for us, we wanted to have that full scan to see that everything was okay and was normal, or within ranges of normal, um, with having understanding that scans are incredibly inaccurate as well. So
Yes, it
um,
really is. Ah.
yeah, they do.
So did
It
you end
does.
up
It
getting the scan the day after, or did they end
Yeah.
up?
So
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, we did. Yeah, we went back the following day, and it was fine. And yeah, she was the other way around, so she was absolutely fine. So I was like, right, okay, no more scans. I don't want any more. I know that she's healthy and well. I feel that intuitively. And
Mm.
a lot of people are like, oh, it must be a relief seeing everything's okay. And I was like, not really. I don't feel a sense of relief. I just felt a sense of, yeah, I know. Like it was nice to have. It didn't bother me whether it did or not really, but it was nice to have the computer affirm what I knew already
Mm.
was right, and
It's
true,
like a
that she is
confirmation for
well.
you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but more so, yeah, like I said, I didn't really mind that much. My partner was, I think men like to see the babies on the scan. It helps them kind of connect or whatever sometimes.
Mm.
So my partner was more into the scans than I was. I wasn't really that bothered about them. So
Yeah.
um and then we moved through the pregnancy, and it was all good and well. I just loved being pregnant. I loved moving slowly, and I didn't have any issues or anything. It was just really beautiful. I just loved the process, and I wish that every woman like could have the same process that I did and the experience that I did, because it was, I know not every woman has that, and some people go through a lot of suffering and stuff. So I feel very grateful for that experience.
Mm.
Um, yeah,
And
so
coming into your birth story,
yes.
want to tell us a little bit
So
about, yeah, did you have any early signs of labor approaching for you at all?
nothing at all, no. She was such a wiggly baby. My midwife said she's never seen a baby move so much in the womb, like like you could see like feet and hands and full on. It was really epic, seeing that. Um, yeah, so towards the end, I told everybody that I knew, basically, that I didn't want to be contacted for like at least the month leading up. So from like 35 weeks, because I know they can come well anytime, but I didn't want people texting, are they here, da, 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 you know. So yeah, so I told everybody, which was really great. So that was such great advice from other mothers, that don't tell people the due date, number one, and tell people just not to contact you. And it was so nice because I got that time to be in that last month or so, to be going inward and just being and listening to baby and listening to my body, and just being in it and just reveling in it, and in that peace of, I just found it very peaceful towards the end, and knowing that this life will never be like this again. So really enjoy this peace and being able to just do exactly what I want whenever I want, sort of thing. So yeah, there was no signs. I have got a video the night before she was born, and she's just absolutely flipping all over the place. Um, but it was quite chaotic at home before she was born. It was quite stressful because we were doing lots of renovation. So it wasn't, I didn't really have a place to relax that much. Luckily, we have a lovely garden space here, and so I could go outside. I spent a lot of time outside. But it wasn't how I pictured, like being able to do yoga and sit on my mat and do meditation and journaling and stuff up in my room, and that it wasn't an option. So my midwife had recommended to us to do something together as a couple before the baby's born that you can't do when the baby's born, but we couldn't really think of anything because we like just being in nature, and the only thing we think is the cinema, and I'm not even that bothered anyway. We just watch a movie at home. So we just went for a walk together. This was the day before she was born. We decided to have a day just us, like forget the renovations, forget all the stuff everywhere, just be together. So we went for a walk on the hill, a very slow, ploddy walk on the hill, and just went to town and got some lunch in town, I think. And then we came home, spent some time in the garden, and where we're living, our house is joined onto my parents' house, and my brother also lives there, and our gardens kind of overlap a little bit. And I saw my brother, my little brother, and he was saying hello over the fence, and I was like, Ollie, I don't mean to be an asshole, but I don't have space. I don't have like the space to hold for anything that you have right now, because I'm going to give birth any moment. I can't even have a conversation about anything. I just don't care about anything else right now. So yeah, so he took that very well. And I said, if you want to support me in any way, food, that's it, but nothing else. So he offered to cook us dinner that night, which was really lovely. And he cooked us a really nice veggie meal, and I hadn't had enough veggies for ages, so it just felt really nourishing and lovely. So yeah, we'd had that nice day together, and we just relaxed together, and we did like put fairy lights up and just made the hallway nice. And then my brother made us dinner, and we had that all in the garden. And I was kind of struggling with my breath, just with all your organs up under everywhere. So I did a yoga session that was given by the NHS, actually. So although I hired my private midwife, I still had access to NHS care if I needed it. And that was one of their options that they had, was free yoga. So there was a local lady over Zoom. So that was really awesome, and put me in like a nice relaxed state in the evening. And then we went to the beach and just listened to the water, and it was just really beautiful. And I think being in that space, obviously baby was like, oh, okay, thanks mum for relaxing, now I can come. So this was 40 plus 4, I think she was born, 40 weeks and 4 days ish. And so I had a really good night's sleep. But let me just say, previous to that, so my sister-in-law had her baby 6 days before me, and she ended up hiring my midwife right at the very end because she had had a really shitty time with being with the hospital. Her baby had clubfoot, and they were just over medicalizing it. It's like, it's just a turned in foot, like there's nothing wrong with him, and they just really over medicalized it. They really, she came out of every appointment crying, and when she told her her birth ideas, they were just no, sort of just really unsupportive, just awful, right? So I just said, I was like, please just call my midwife, like just call her and see. I know they're really busy at the moment and whatever, but there might be a way. And she did, and they hired them right at the last minute, the last week. So yeah, so they had a home birth. So she was going to go to the hospital,
Right.
And then they had a home birth and it was beautiful and it was everything went straight forward and it was completely fine. And
That
that's
shows you, doesn't it? Like it's never too
mm,
late. It's never
right.
too late. Like anyone listening, it's
Absolutely.
never too late. Like if you feel like
Yes.
the midwife you have, or the hospital, or the obstetrician, or whoever, like you can always change your mind. Please do.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. And that was
Mm.
such a, I just think it's such a great example of that because at the beginning she was very, we had similar kind of visions. We both wanted a home birth and wanted to go down the more natural route and just trusting in our bodies and stuff. And then the more like appointment after appointment, she just got more losing herself and more into fear. And I was like, just I was like try and listen to your intuition. And she's like, it's just so hard to because they're just so like your baby might die. Like they just say that to you, and you're like, well, how is that useful? Like
Yeah,
everyone, yeah, of course, we all might die at some point, but like I don't
absolutely.
know,
And I guess
just the
this
language
is,
is.
what, and that's why I brought up this thing with ultrasound, right? That is the risk,
Mm,
is that it gets just super duper over medicalized.
right.
Sometimes, maybe for a good reason, but a
Yeah,
lot of the
yeah,
time,
absolutely.
unnecessarily, like a club
Mm,
foot.
yeah,
Like, I don't even have words. Like, it's just so silly, but
exactly.
it's,
Yeah.
and it would be laughable if it wasn't so fucking terrible, excuse my language, that,
Mm,
so many women just, yeah, just end up with traumatic experiences because of the overmedicalization of absolutely
mm,
everything. Mm.
absolutely. And it just, yeah, it just seemed very unnecessary the way that she was being treated and the she was just told things that weren't factual, and she'd say, okay, can you send me the evidence that backs up what you're saying? And they would send things that were inaccurate. They would just like wasn't evidence, it's like lies. And you're like,
Yeah,
this is the medical system, like they're meant to be specializing in this thing
yeah.
and they're just sharing you something that's incorrect. So
Yeah, it's
anyway,
very interesting how
she
it's
had.
gone so crazy. A lot of
Mm,
things in obstetrics is very like emotional based. Like a lot of the
mm,
quote unquote evidence that doctors and the system relies on, like, is anecdotal from doctors 50 years ago,
yes,
100 years ago. And it's taken us, like,
absolutely.
if you actually if you actually search for, like, this policy is referring to this study or whatever reference, you go to that reference, and then that's referencing that reference, and that's referencing, and you get back like 100 years ago to some dude who's like,
Yeah,
has not, like, and you're like, how is this still in our but that's actually
yeah,
the
yeah.
truth. So much is that. And
Mm,
so the ones who are truly evidence-based, I would say, a home birth midwives, like, they are on top of it, you know?
mm, absolutely.
But
Yeah, the amount
a
of.
lot of the GPs and the everything in the system, like, oof, you have to fact check them. It's crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the it was, my midwife just knew her her she was just constantly looking at research and just was really up to date with all kind of research rather than just the NHS. So
Yeah.
um
And you know why? It's because you
anyways,
have
sorry.
to, because there's a witch hunt. So as a home birth midwife or independent midwife, you have to
Mm,
know that what you're doing is evidence-based, like, because you are,
yeah,
you will be um reported. You will be reported
yeah.
throughout your career. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because
Mm,
people are people. They will report you, like staff
yeah,
in the
the system
hospitals.
is
And
threatened by them,
yeah,
I suppose.
absolutely. But the
Mm,
ones in the system don't have that scrutiny on them,
mm,
right?
yeah,
So that's why this can live
absolutely.
on. Like, yeah, anyways, we're digressing, but I just,
Yeah,
yeah, this is infuriating to me, and I just think it's really important to
yeah.
know, for everyone listening too, that this is actually how it is right now. It's absolutely
Mm.
upside down.
It was crazy. My sister-in-law was part of an NCT group. Um, I didn't do one of those, but
What's an NCT
she,
group?
oh, so I don't know what it stands for, but it's just um something you pay through with the hospital. It's like £200-300, and they teach you basically about babies and hospital procedures and how to be a compliant hospital patient really when
You
you
have
go
to
in. This is
pay
how,
for that in the NHS?
yes.
Oh my God, you have to
So
pay for that
it's an
shit.
opt-in thing. Yeah, so it's an opt-in thing. So I don't know, don't quote me, I don't know if it's through the well, yeah, they would go to hospital, I think, for it. So both my cousin and my sister-in-law did that. But I said, can you just, I don't mean to be stingy, but can you tell me if there's anything you think I need to know? Like, what did you really learn? And it's like, this is an epidural, this is a sweep, and this is a blah, you know. So I was like, well, I'm not, I'm hoping not to have all that stuff. So I don't feel drawn to it, you know, and I can
Yeah,
just look up about that. So anyway,
yeah,
but every person, I think there was about 8, 9 people, every person in her group was in possibly induced,
yeah.
and like all of the, like, you know, big baby stuff, and they were coming out like £7 something, and all the things were unnecessary that happened, all the interventions were basically
Yes.
unnecessary, and just like what. And she just got out by the skin of her teeth because she left that system and went with this private midwife who, yeah, then she had the nice home birth. It was 12 hours, plopped out in the water, everything was fine, like just beautiful, right?
Mhm.
So I just thought, wow, how. And as soon as she opted into the care of my midwife, she was herself again. My
Mm.
sister-in-law, she was, I could see her, she was tapped into her intuition again, she was
Mm.
empowered and she was supported, and she was her, you know, she's a strong-willed person, she's not a timid, oh, you know, she's a strong-willed person. And it was to see her crumble and get battered down was really hard to watch. So I was so grateful. My brother said to me, he said, Mary, I'm so grateful that you told us about your midwife. He said
Mm.
it's the best investment I've ever made, is
Yeah,
spending that money. He's like, it's priceless, because he was nervous about also being the supporter going into the hospital,
yeah,
you know, being an advocate. I mean, you can't, you know, it's impossible to learn all the things about birth,
yeah.
like especially being a man as well, it's a lot. So
Mm.
it's a lot for men to hold space for women and going through that system. So whereas he felt completely relaxed at home, it was just really lovely. And
Yeah.
you know, he was asleep for half of it. It was just a really lovely experience with
Yeah.
them. So
Well, I'm glad
anywho,
that happened. Yeah, let's dive on into
yeah,
your birth story
yeah,
now.
sorry. um I hope she doesn't mind me saying that. So so just leading up to the birth story, I had a urine sample that came up with a little bit of either protein or white blood. I think it was white blood cells. Yeah. So I said, the midwife said that's normal. It's because it was only a small amount, and they said it. I can't remember now, but like it's like everything is preparing down there. It's quite normal to have that. And I said, well, I'm a little bit nervous because I had a UTI and I didn't have any symptoms. So could I have a UTI test? And so they did a test, and some bacteria came up, just a small amount, like a rectal bacteria. So it could have been um, a contaminated sample because it's very tiny. So I did another one a week later, and that bacteria had gone, but then strep B had came up. So again, I was called by my GP, by the receptionist, and she said, you have strep B come up in your sample. You need to tell your midwife, and they will likely put you on antibiotics, and you'll need to be put on antibiotics for your birth, like during your birth. So I told my midwife, and I just said, so I asked them, how much is it? Like, is there a lot of this stuff? And she's like, oh, it doesn't really say. And I was like, are you sure? Like, it doesn't have an indicator. And she goes, oh, it says scanty. And I was like, I think that means not much. So,
Love that you're
okay.
diagnosing that.
So, um, yeah, so I spoke to my midwife and I said, I have a scanty amount. I believe the word scanty means not much, but she said, yeah, that again, it could be a contaminated sample. And she's read the stuff of like Sarah Wiccan and all,
Yes.
and you know, looked at all the stuff and the book about strep B. She's read the whole book. So I'm going to give birth any day. Like I'm 40 something,
Hmm.
I'm 40 weeks now or something.
Hmm.
And so I said, can you just summarize the book? I'm dyslexic. Can you summarize the book and like tell me, you know? She said, well, basically from the summary, it's you have a 99.97% chance of the baby being fine if strep B is present in
Yeah.
a small amount, right? So because I was Googling with the NHS, and it's like 1 in 1,000 or a bit less or something will get an infection of some kind. It was quite, you know, I thought that's quite a lot of babies, you know. So I was like, anyway, she told me that, and I was like, okay. And I felt when I told her, although I've had this previous history of being a bit anxious about body and illness and stuff, I felt this inner calm, which I feel was my intuition
Hmm.
speaking. I wasn't panicked, I wasn't worried. And I, I feel like when you're pregnant, there's this beautiful opening between the veil is so
Mm.
thin, as you say, and your intuition is so strong.
Yeah.
And like, we're just not told, it's not spoken about really, but it is just so strong. And I remind every pregnant woman I know that whatever you feel, no matter what it is, whatever you're
Mm.
advised, that's just advice. You are the living experience of this child inside you being pregnant and soon birthing. You know what is right for you.
Yeah.
um, and so yeah, so I trusted that. And she said, obviously I have to say, because they have insurance, which is why it's so expensive to have the midwife. It's the insurance that's so expensive, it's thousands for that, not
Yeah.
for the actual care. So um yeah, so she said, I have to tell you that the advice is to go to the hospital, to have intravenous antibiotics, whatever, but it's up to you. And I just said that I don't want to do that,
Yeah.
because I don't feel called to. So we just carried
Mm.
on as normal. And yeah, like I said, we had that really nice, relaxing day before I gave birth. I woke up at 5 a.m. with my period pains, cramps down the bottom of my abdomen. And I was like, well, that's not a period. So I just thought they were coming every like 3 to 5 minutes. And it was just very mild, like really easy. And I was so grateful I had this full night's sleep. Um, yeah, because that's what I was going to say. My sister-in-law had labored through the night, and she said it was really tiring. And I was like,
Mm.
made note of that. So obviously my body was like, I don't want to do that through the night. So I waited till I had a really nice sleep, and yeah, started laboring. And I messaged my best friend who I'd known since I was born, and um, we'd made candles together for my mother's blessing. I'd got all my friends to make candles, so I was going to light theirs and they were going to light mine when I went into labor, but I didn't feel like telling anybody but her. So she lit her candle with her son. It was really beautiful. And we just chatted. And I said, oh, I'm squeezing this comb thing. I'm just trying it out. I got a comb and everything. I was just chatting to her for a bit whilst my partner was asleep next to me. I thought there's no point in waking him because this could take days, it could not even be it. Um, then he woke about 7, and I was just like beaming at him, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I think we're having a baby today." And he's like, "Oh gosh, what do we do?" And I was like, "There's nothing to do. Like, it may not happen. It's just take it as it is, and like take each moment as it comes." And um, got out of bed at 7, and a bit of fluid came out. I don't know what it was. I didn't feel like it was my waters, but I don't know. It was something. So I told my midwife, and yeah, and she said, it could be a bit of your waters, whatever, just keep an eye out and see how you feel. And so she came up, I think it was, yeah, so she came up at 11:30. I've written it down here. And by this point, my contractions were kind of hard, like more intense. They started in like the front of my abdomen, like the
Mhm.
bottom, and then they moved around into my hips, and then they just stayed there for the rest of the birth. um and yeah, so before she arrived, I just kind of walked around the house, and I tried to make some food. I tried to eat, but I just had a little nibble, wasn't really that hungry.
Mm.
And I walked outside on the stones, like on the sharp floor, and I literally walked through a contraction and didn't feel it because it was so, like, it was like a birthing cone, but on your feet. Um,
Mm.
it was really cool. I didn't even really notice it. I was kind of dancing and just trying to move and keep fluid. Um, and yeah, and so then my midwife came along, and she was like, okay, so I think you're in labor. And I was like, yeah, I think so too. And I just felt a little bit nervous. And she was like, Mary, your body won't give you anything you can't handle. And I was like, thank you for reminding me that. um and yeah, and then I had a contraction while she was there, and she just she was a massage therapist and yoga teacher and stuff as well, and she put her hands on my hips and just like really like caressed me in a really beautiful way, and I just felt so loved, and it was just gorgeous. And then I just, yeah, kind of just swayed around and just waddled about. And she was like, I can go to town and sort out my day because I've got arranged childcare and stuff now, because I think you're in late, like it's happening today. um or I can stay here. And I just felt like now you're here, I want you to stay here, even though it's only 5 minutes down the road. I just didn't want her to go because I liked her energy being there. So she stayed and sorted out all her stuff downstairs, and that was nice. And yeah, and I was just upstairs in the bedroom. I'd had a shower as well. Um, and yeah, just trying to breathe and just listening, just remembering all the stories that I've heard and just keeping moving and stuff. And my partner, he squeezed my hips. I was like, oh, there's one coming, can you just squeeze my hips, please? And then he's like, remember, you can float up out of your body and observe yourself, la la la. And I was like, shut up. And then after the contraction, I was like, Carl, I was like, when you go through birth, then you can tell me to like float up and watch all this stuff happening, right? It's quite intense. So just tell me I'm doing really well and nothing else. He didn't say anything else after that, which was quite funny. So yeah, so yeah, I'd got in the shower as well, and that was quite nice. That was quite, yeah, just relaxing on my back. And I just kept saying, I love this, I love this. I just kept reprogramming all the time. Anytime, I didn't feel fear really. I just felt a bit like nervous, excited kind of thing. But no, I was never really scared because I was at home. I was where I felt safe. So um yeah, and then so yeah, 1 p.m. My it was more intense, and I was just upstairs. I think I was sat down on my kind of my knees, sat on my legs kind of thing. And my partner was filling the pool downstairs, as well as my mum and my dad and my brother, which I didn't realize they were all, you know, chucking buckets of water, like because the showers are filling it quick enough, so they're trying to get hot water from everywhere and fill up the birth pool, which is really sweet. And yeah, and then she, once it was filled up, it took like over maybe an hour or 2 hours to fill it up. And once it was filled, my midwife, Mary, the pool is ready. Would you like to get in? I was like, no, thanks. And she's like, okay, no worries. And I felt awful that everyone had been like piling together to get all this birth pool ready. And I never went downstairs. I never even saw this beautiful space that my partner was creating for me downstairs. Although I could hear all the piano music going and like the lights were, you know, he'd made it so lovely. But it was kind of nice because I liked being on my own. I liked just, yeah, being by myself upstairs. The midwife would just come and go and just left me to it. And yeah, so then my second, the backup midwife came at 2 o'clock. And yeah, it was just lovely having her there. And then I wanted it just to be silent. I just found that I was really aware. I thought, you know, when people say you go into this like weird space and stuff, I'm sure, yeah, I did enter that for sure. But my mind was just so sharp, but not in a, like a heightened stress state. I was just in this space of like clarity and clearness, and I could just hear everything, but also wasn't tapping into anything that wasn't necessary. And yeah, it was just really beautiful and just calm. And I was just trusting. And my midwife, every now and again, she would check the heart rate, which I was fine with. And the first time I did sort of, when the first time she did it, I did sort of feel like a little bit of apprehension, like there was just not an intervention. Well, I suppose it's a bit of an intervention, maybe coming in, and it might come up, make me come into my head and worry. But I knew that she was fine. So when she did, and she was like, she's perfect, and I was like, I know. You know, it was just like a really nice affirmation. So I then wasn't worried about it then, because I just knew that everything I was feeling was fine and everything. So she was, every time she was testing the heart rate, it was lower and lower, but I wasn't feeling anything in the front at all. It was all just in my hips. And she's like, oh, she's getting lower. And I was like, thank God you're here. If I'd have done this on my own, she would just suddenly arrive and I'd be like, where the hell did you just come from? Because I wasn't feeling any dissension, anything inside really. It was all just in the hips.
Yeah, because
And
it's
then
all
just this,
opening, expanding, you know, that's what's happening is that
yeah,
expansion. And, you know,
right.
babies are really low already before labor.
Yeah,
It's not like they have to
yes.
travel very far. It's just that
Mm,
opening that needs to happen. You know, your hips open, right? It's so amazing. Our
yeah.
sacrum and coccyx and on the side, like everything opens to make room for that to happen. And of course, the
Mm,
the cervix opens, and that's so it's really the baby needs to travel, you know. this much. It needs to
Yeah,
travel
yeah.
down the birth canal, right? It needs to come through the cervix and then down the birth canal. And really, the big descent happens um, when the cervix has, opened and you're bearing
Mm,
down, really, yeah.
mm. So yeah, so then I was, yeah, just sat on my knees, just squeezing the comb and just breathing through them. And between each contraction, I would just take a sip of water and electrolyte and just do my best to relax any part of me, especially my jaw. And yeah, just I could just hear the trees, like it's kind of bringing me back. And I can hear the trees just blowing in the wind, and it's like a beautiful temperature outside, and oh, it's just gorgeous. Like the window was open, and oh, it's so nice. And yeah, and but I just remember like my knees were killing me because I was just sat on my own legs for flipping ages. So I was just like, oh, the pain is in my knees now. Like you get, it's a bit of a sensation and a strong sensation when you're contracting, and then it goes, and then you feel completely normal and fine. But my knees were hurting, and I was like, if I could just tap out for like 5 minutes more to give my knees a rest, like lie down, but obviously contractions come and you can't avoid them. So, and I'd figured out how to do it on my knee. So anyway, so I decided then to lie on my left side because I started then getting the bearing down feeling. So as my
Mm.
contractions, yeah, went from just being in my hips to then I just sort of went, ugh, like with one of them, and I was like, ugh, what was that? Like it just felt almost like I was going to throw up, I suppose, but
Yep.
happening below her, I guess. And so I was like, well, that was a bit weird. And then so I was like, okay, I feel like I want to just, yeah, lie on my side now just to have a bit of a rest. So I knew that lying on your left side can slow down the process as well. I didn't want it to happen fast. Because my sister-in-law, she was kind of upright in the pool, and he just shot out, and then she was not like in a strong shock, but she was a bit shocked from it, and I didn't want to be in shock. So I decided to choose to lie down on my side. Like everything was very intentional. I wasn't just like flailing around or anything. It was just very slow and intentional about how I was moving and choosing to be. And yeah, and then when I lay on my side, gosh, that was such relief for my knees. So I just propped up on a couple of cushions, and it was just so nice to be able to fully relax my body between each contraction and not have to hold myself up, kind of thing. Um, and then yeah, so half through, I decided to lie on my left side, and about 3:45, I was like breathing, and my body was just pushing. But I could, when they were like fully pushing contractions, when I'd like kind of really felt with them a few times, I felt I didn't want to be watched. I felt unsafe to be watched, which was a really odd like thing for me to kind of realize, because I thought, I think, there's two midwives here who know what they're doing, and my partner's here, and I feel safe with them. Like, but I
Very
just said,
primal, though. Your primal birthing
absolutely,
brain.
yeah. So I didn't feel safe to lean into it fully with people watching. So they sensed that and left. My midwives were so in touch. They just, yeah, they gave me space. And then as soon as they left, I was like, rah! I just like fully went into it and then into into that. And I was like, okay, you can come back in now. I know how to do it. Like, I know this
Yeah.
is safe to feel this feeling and like lean into
Yeah.
it. Um, yeah. So the only thing was, because I'd seen and heard about your knees coming in to open the outlet, I was keeping my legs and my knees together because I was thinking then it's all going to come out, but it wasn't. I needed to actually open my legs up, maybe because I'm a small person, or I don't know, but um so I did. My midwife did guide my knee just very slightly, like up, and she said you can put your foot on the bed, so I had something to push into. Then I had my hand on my knee and was like pushing. It was nice to have that groundedness to push into, when a contraction came. So I put my leg up, and then it was just, her head was just peeking, and just keeping going in and out, and um yeah, just with all the contractions, I'd just be like, I love this is amazing. And my partner has got it all on video as well. He like video, it's like full on bum view, like it's not a one for Instagram. But um well, I mean, for some people, I'd love to see someone else's video, but I don't feel,
Yeah, no,
quite
I
want to share that.
understand. Sure. I love that.
So, but he knew that I'd want to see it, and it was so good for actually processing the birth afterwards, seeing that and
Mm.
realizing how powerful I was. And
Mm.
it was, I'm so grateful that he did film that. So, but I
Mm.
was just remember just like I was like wiggling my hips, just trying to keep movement. I was kind of holding
Mm.
my bum up and trying to open, and like, why is she not coming out? This is taking a while. So the whole pushing phase was about an hour, like 45 minutes, an hour or something.
Yeah,
But
beautiful.
again, I chose to
Normal.
be on
So
my side,
normal.
and yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
it
normal
was,
though.
yeah.
Super normal. Like
Yeah, yeah.
perfect.
It was
Mm.
a beautiful progression, because you could see with each push her
Mm.
head was coming more and more. Um, and my midwife was so good. I was like, "Can you see much there?" She's like, "Yeah, loads." And I look back at the video, and you can see hardly it. Well, I mean, it's a fair amount of head, I suppose, but like hardly anything really. I'm like, "Thank you for saying that, because it helped me keep going."
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so but I had to, yeah, although they were involuntary pushes, I could push with them, or I could resist them. So yeah, I was really pushing with, to just try and get her there. And then I felt the almighty ring of fire. And it was, yeah, I just felt, I'd listened to one birth podcast where a woman had split upwards and opened her clitoris. Like, it's not very, it was on your podcast, I think, actually. And
No.
it
I'm
was,
like, what? I can't
yeah.
remember that. What?
Yeah, I think, or maybe I mostly listened to yours. So anyway, she had to go into hospital. They transferred her to another hospital to get stitched up properly, because it was like gone into her clitoris. So I fully was thinking, right, I'm going to lose my clitoris today, because this is what it's feeling like. It was so stretching at the top, and the
Mm.
stinging. And I was like,
Mm.
well, there's no way out apart from through. So like, she's not coming out of my
Mm.
mouth, is she? So I just got to lean into it. And so
It's
yeah,
not
I just
coming out of my
fully
mouth. I love that. What a thought.
yeah, so I was like, she's nearly there, just go with it. It doesn't matter, they can sew you up, whatever. So and I was really scared of tearing originally, and it was a real surrender, a real, I had to lean into that moment fully. I had to just push through the fear kind of thing, and or lean into it. And yeah, and then her head came. My midwife held a warm compress, which was so nice, because I like being cool, and the room was quite cool. Um, so because I wasn't in water and everything, I didn't feel warm down my vaginal area, so it was really nice to have warmth there.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's actually
and so
evidence-based to do.
yeah,
Have a warm
so
compress.
she right, so she said that she saw the whitening of
Mm.
my perineum, so she was like, I want to try to take that. So
Yeah.
yeah, when she was fully crowned, I was just like pushing with everything, and she just gently guided the skin over her face.
Mm.
So it was happening anyway, but she just was very, with this warm
Mm.
cloth, just really helping to try and preserve things,
Yeah,
which
beautiful.
was really beautiful and welcomed. And gosh, yeah, such relief when her head came out, because it felt like 10 times bigger than I thought it was gonna.
Yeah.
And
And talking about the clitoris,
mhm,
women will instinctively hold their clitoris, like mothers
yes,
as they're birthing, like put
mm,
their hand there and press, you know.
mm,
I think that if you get that instinct, that is a way of protecting yourself
mm,
there as well,
yeah,
like
mm.
pushing and holding there. Mm.
Yes. Yeah, I think I definitely felt down at some point, because from seeing birth videos and people like feeling down, I thought I'd love to do that. And then I just found it a little confronting, feeling the bigness that was there, that was way bigger
Mm.
than I thought. Like, her head was twice the size I thought it was going to be. Like, it just covered my whole area once it was out.
Hmm.
It was,
It
she had an
does.
average size head,
Yep.
but it
But
was
that's
huge.
it.
So,
It is. It's
yeah, it's
definitely
not.
magical that it makes its way through as it
I
does.
know,
It's amazing.
incredible. So yeah, so her head was guided through, and then I was like, oh, baby just slips out. Well, they don't. They just. So I was like,
Some does.
waiting for this. Just,
Ah.
yeah, I mean, so yeah, I was waiting for this slippy fish feeling that people mention, and it didn't. Yeah, it didn't happen for me. So I could feel when I had to come out, I could then feel um, her rotating, but I felt that again it wasn't very internal. I couldn't really feel much inside. I thought somebody was touching her. I was like, don't touch her, don't touch her. And they're like, and Carl's like, Mary, nobody's touching the baby. I really thought they were like just having a little
Mm.
fiddle or something.
No, it's the
And so that
baby.
was her feeling, her rotation. I could feel it from the outside in, and it was just really amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then once she kind of rotated it around, my midwife just like gently held her head as she came out so she didn't like fall down, so she just passed her straight through to me.
Yeah.
But her shoulders, when they're just huge. I was like, what is this, where's slippery fish, like it's another head coming through. Oh, that's so funny. So it wasn't quite as bad as the head, but they were bigger than, yeah, it felt like a big mass compared to what I thought it was going to be like. So anyway, she, yeah, everything else came out and it was like a big old body. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then she just passed her up through. She was kind of sleeping really, and then started to cry as she got to me. And I was just like, oh, hello, baby. I was like, there you are, or something along those lines. And it wasn't, I felt like, because I'm quite an emotional person, I thought I'd be like, oh my God, my baby and stuff. But I think because I felt so safe throughout the whole process, there wasn't a time where I felt I need to protect my space. I need to, I
Mm.
just felt so safe and calm that I was like, well, of course, there you are, because we've just been doing this for 12 hours together. It was just beautiful. And
Yeah.
um, when I was also pushing, but her head wasn't out yet, that a bee had flown in through the window, and I love bees. They're kind of like a spirit animal to me, and I just felt like really blessed in that moment that a bee had come in to say hello. And I thought my midwife might be scared, like, oh, it might sting me or something. So I was like
Mm.
reassuring her, like, don't worry, I love bees. I was like, hi, bee, saying hello to the bee. So that was just a really nice, blessed moment as well. And yeah, and so she was, yeah, just placed up on my chest and was still lying on my side, and it was just, oh, the best feeling. But it wasn't how some people say, that overwhelming feeling of love or what have you. It wasn't a numbness either, but it was just like a hello, nice to meet you sort of feeling, like when you connect with somebody and you want to be in their, like, you want them in your life and stuff. It was that kind of feeling, like I know you in some sense, but I also, hello, nice to meet you, I'm looking forward to getting to know you. It was that, just a
Yeah.
fresh start feeling.
I
um
love that. I love that you express it
yeah.
like that because there's
Mm,
definitely a lot of women who have that experience that it's not that
absolutely.
overwhelming. I mean, it's important to talk about how we can feel so
Yeah.
differently and that it's all good, like it's all
Mm,
perfect.
absolutely. Yeah, I
Mm.
do I do tell everyone that I feel that way, because when people tend to announce their pregnancies online and stuff, they say, we instantly we love her so much and blah blah blah. And I just thought, I didn't not love her, but I wasn't like, it was just normal, and it was just a normal day almost feeling. It wasn't like this overwhelming sense of something. Then I thought, maybe if I gave birth somewhere where I didn't feel fully safe, I would feel this overwhelming, like I must protect,
Mm.
she's, this primal feeling may come more strongly. I don't know. But yeah, I know that it's normal to feel that way, to have this
Mm.
just fresh start or a numbness or whatever people feel. It's not, yeah, there's nothing wrong at all. So it was nice. It was nice to feel that. It was nice to just be like, hello, there you are. We just did this and you're amazing. And then, yeah, and then I didn't have any contractions after that for the placenta. Um, my midwife just put a little bit of tension on her cord. It's probably like 20, 30 minutes after she was born. And I kind of just wanted to not get it out. I suppose I suppose I did. I just wanted it to be over, to know that everything was going to be okay, because I knew like bleeding and stuff could come after that. Well, come anytime, but really. But and also when I was pregnant, I my placenta was quite low, and it was within the NHS's okay range. So it was like 10 mil away from the cervix when I was 20 weeks. But when I was moved through the pregnancy, I wanted to check that it had moved up, because obviously it grows generally up out the way, but it also grows bigger, so it can still stay low. Um, so I did have a placenta scan at 30 something, 38 weeks, something like that. And when I went in for the scan, they I I saw my midwife first in a different room, and we checked the heart rate and everything was fine. And then we went in for the scan, and she said, "Okay, we'll just start with checking the heart rate." I said, "Oh, that's not necessary. I'm just here to check where the placenta is." Um, and she's like, "Okay, so we'll just take a measurement of the head." And I said, I just only want to check where the placenta is. I don't want any other measurements, or I just want it quick, like least ultrasound exposure as possible, please." So she just said basically it's kind of the baby, like it's just too, they can't fully see where it was or whatever, like, but it seems to be okay, like,
Mm-hmm.
because there's too much baby and too much placenta going on. It was, and I was like, okay,
Okay,
I'm sure that'll be
that's
fine then.
interesting.
It's not over the whole. So I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
But they can't really see because the baby's head was so far down, they couldn't see
Mm-hmm.
down there or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so it wasn't that insightful anyway. But yeah. So anyway, so I gave birth to that. I just like sat up in a squatter position and just really tried to push, and that came down and out. We just popped it in a bucket and then crawled into the bed, and we stayed attached to, or Ren stayed attached to her placenta for 5, 6, 7, at least 2, 3 hours, something like that. It was obviously fully stopped pulsating and very, yeah, very much ready to come off by that point. Or I would like to have done lotus birth, but also I couldn't be bothered as well to lug around a placenta. Like it was for me, a cord burning was the next best thing to a lotus birth. So, but I really wanted to honor the placenta, and yeah, I didn't just want to like turf it away and snip it off. It just didn't feel, it felt too harsh and severing. I wanted it to be as gentle as possible. So
Yeah.
my dad actually made a cord burning box, even though he's not a spiritual person whatsoever. He looked at me in such a weird way when I asked if he had any spare wood for me to make a box. And then he ended up coming up and making the box, which is really beautiful. So we used a couple of beeswax candles and had this nice ceremony in the bed, just me and Carl and Ren. My midwife just left us to it, and it was really nice to do that actually, because it was very, just grounded us in the moment, and just rather than just getting into having a baby and doing stuff, or it just slowed it down, even though it wasn't fast in any way, shape or form. It just was a really beautiful present moment together. And it only took about 5-10 minutes. And yeah, and then my midwife she took some of my placenta and made me a smoothie with it, which felt really intuitive and good to have. And then they stayed for another like 4 or 5 hours, something like that, and I had a bit of homeopathy for the healing, and I healed really quickly. I did have a tear, just a skin tear from my vagina down about like an inch or a bit less, and she said because it's straight, so it's not weird and awkward, that would definitely need stitches. But she said, we can give you stitches, and we would say yes, have stitches, but it's entirely up to you. She said if you have stitches, it will heal in a week, and if not, then it'll heal like 4 to 6 weeks or something. And I said, well, I don't plan on going anywhere or doing anything. No.
No.
Is it less time than that?
You know
She may
what?
not, she may not have said that.
The thing is, like, the vagina is amazing at healing. And it can
Yeah,
literally be
yeah,
like you have that kind of tear, first degree, maybe even second, and within days, without a stitch. Depends on how you heal, like, oh, I mean, how
yeah,
you rest,
mm,
especially, putting your legs together and like, using calendula or, you know, water next to when you wee, or like, maybe doing a sitz bath, or like helping with
mm,
healing things, or even just resting, like not even doing
yeah,
anything, like your vagina will heal. And it can literally
absolutely.
be days without a
Yeah,
stitch, and it can come back together. So that's not true that, it takes
yes.
weeks
So
without
I
stitches.
do say, I do want to say, I don't know if she said that, hands up.
Okay.
Fully, I could be just making that up.
Hmm.
My memory is not fantastic. So um, I felt like it was a longer, obviously it was like a longer time that she recommended, but
Yeah.
yeah, maybe it was just like the full healing of everything is full. I don't know.
Well, I
So that,
think
yeah,
what the
that's
most
probably
important
incorrect.
thing there is that,
Mm,
say that you will not honor your postpartum. which I think
Mm.
anyone listening to this knows that you should definitely honor your postpartum and you should be in bed
Mm.
and rest definitely for a week. Like be in bed or around the bed for the first few weeks and rest,
Yeah.
rest, rest. And if you want to heal naturally without a stitch, then you need to keep your legs together. If you have more children, that can be tricky, right? So if you have more children, you have to run after a
Yes.
toddler days after
Yeah.
birth, and you don't think about how you're sitting, how you're walking, how you're getting out of bed, or spreading your legs here and there.
Mm.
Then maybe a stitch is good. So it's about your lifestyle and how you're going to be postpartum. If you are committed and you have people around you, they're going to support you and you can be in bed and
Mhm.
resting and you want to opt and you have it also depends on definitely on the tear. I'm not saying all tears heal beautifully. Like it is, oh, there's a fly. Um, it depends on if if you're gonna stay in bed and heal,
Yeah.
in the best way for for the healing of your tear.
Hmm.
And so you have to look at your
Absolutely. So
lifestyle. Yeah, that's
yeah,
key.
so I didn't know that I was definitely going to honor that process. So yeah, so I'll just admit that she said it will heal quicker with stitches,
Mm.
um, and take longer without. So I just said I'm feeling a little bit of like nervous, like fear, I think, about it, and I don't know whether that's my head being scared about having it all myself touched down there with needles and things, or whether it's in my intuition saying I don't need it. So I said, can we leave it 24 hours? Because they did the postpartum care they came every day for like even almost 6 weeks. Um, and well, for the first week and then off and on after that. But so I left it and everything was fine and it healed very, very quickly. I used homeopathy. They were really versed in homeopathy, so they put together some remedies for
Oh,
me to take.
mm,
And then I also used witch hazel water,
beautiful.
colloidal silver spray, and then I put manuka honey on it.
Mm.
Um, and I got mastitis like 3 or 4 days after birth or something, and I was dangle feeding, and I was like crouching, but I was squatting, and I was like, oh no, I've been squatting for like 3 days to dangle feed, and I was like, right, I'm gonna keep my legs together and stuff. And I looked at my stitch and my scar, and it had healed together after like 5, 6 days or something. So it
Without
fully
stitches.
basically healed without stitches with
I
yeah,
told
just
ya,
manuka
told
honey.
ya.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was
Yeah.
amazing seeing that
Mm.
that healing. And yeah, and I was very conscious of it. So I was just in bed. I felt like I needed to be horizontal
Mm.
for at least a week, but I did the first 40 days basically in bed.
Beautiful.
So my partner was really on board with it, and which I'm so
Yeah.
grateful for. It's the best gift. And
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't really have any people, and it was really beautiful, gentle process. And
Mm.
because of that, I think that's what helped me feel grounded as a mother, and not like as scattered and
Mm.
as stressed as a lot of people mention that they are when
Yeah.
they go out very quickly. So
Yeah.
sort of fly there.
Yeah. There's a fly in front
Joining
of
in.
mine. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing this story. If you had a first-time mama in front of you right now who's about to have her first baby and she really wants to have a natural and empowering birth experience, what advice and pearls of wisdoms would you give to her?
Well, number one, listen to your podcast. I honestly think I learned so much from your podcast. I like specifically because of your experience. It's not just a podcast of women sharing their stories, which is beautiful and wonderful,
Mm.
but the insights that you gave, I learned so much, and I became so well versed in practices and things that are evidence-based and not evidence-based, and the knowledge was power.
Mm.
Um so yeah, obviously, yeah, that's my biggest recommendation, is just listen to people's stories, as and remember, but also remembering when somebody tells you their story, when you listen to a story, remember that that is theirs, and no matter what happens to them will not necessarily happen to you. Like, your birth will be different, every birth is different. And
Mm.
so it's being informed, being educated, and being open to scenarios so you can learn and make informed choices and
Mm.
decisions from an empowered place. um, but yeah, also remembering that it's yours and yours will be different. So, when I told someone that I was having a home birth, they said, oh, my mum hemorrhaged she bled out. I was like, cool. I said,
Yeah.
what happened? Was she induced? Was, you know, I wasn't like, oh flip, I might die. I mean, yeah, okay, I had to face that thought and that feeling, and that reality is a possibility. But I was okay with that, and my partner was okay with that. I spoke
Mm.
out those kind of fears and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
it's
I'd
important to
get,
also know with those things that because people tell people this all the time, right? That the
yeah,
actual risk of having that happen at a home birth is extremely low. That happening in the hospital, much higher,
mm,
But people just,
because of the
yeah,
intervention. Yeah,
yeah. People go like,
absolutely.
oh, I
So,
would have died had I not been in the hospital. Well, maybe what happened to you happened because you were in the
mm,
hospital. I mean, that's also a
absolutely.
very, like, big likelihood.
Yeah, and I find it interesting when women have had experiences and they've ended up in emergency cesareans,
Hmm.
they would have their next child at home. And I think logically in my head, if like my birth ended up with an emergency cesarean, I'd be like, thank God I was at the hospital, surely. Like, but I feel that that's their intuition telling them that it happened that way because they were there. Had they
Yeah,
been somewhere else that they felt safer, or it may not have ended up in this emergency situation. So
yeah,
I find that, yeah, really interesting when you've been through that experience. It's very scary and very, how
yeah,
even then your intuition is just so strong. So you must listen to it. But I feel also just getting curious and familiar with birth, um, learning just what happens in the process of birth and the hormonal shifts that happen and how those hormones connect with your felt experience of it.
mm,
So how you're going to feel in your emotional body, likely,
mm,
most people likely feel fear when they transition because your oxytocin drops, um
mm,
your stress hormone like increases, gives you energy to push your baby out.
mm.
And along with that comes fear, or the
Yeah,
feeling of fear or panic. So when I got to transition, it was not really a monumental memory because it was just, ooh, I feel a little bit nervous, same as I did when my midwife came at the beginning, like, oh, how's this going to happen, like how's the baby going to come out of me, that sort of thing, because I've never done it before and what have you. But it wasn't, because I knew that feeling, I knew what was coming. It
mm,
didn't overtake me, it didn't
mm,
encompass me, it was just, I was observing it, and it was just almost playful, like, oh, look at that there, like now, so that, knowing that process and telling your partner, whoever's going to be there with you, about that too, and how you may act, when
mm.
you get this sort of slump of energy and they think, oh God, please help, or she's crying out for help. It's
Yeah,
just reassure, like she's there, she's almost there, don't add into the panic. So just getting curious and getting familiar with birth, I would really recommend. There's like books and podcasts and everything, like
mm,
anything that resonates with you.
yeah,
um yeah, and that hormonal feeling and how they may feel. Yeah, the birth stories, videos as well, so you can just see what birth looks like and get an idea of it. um, and yeah, the biggest thing is listen to your intuition. It's the strongest and most heightened it will ever be when you're pregnant and when you're birthing. And so no matter what your scenario or your situation ends up being, there's always a choice, and you will always make the right choice if you listen in first.
yeah,
So yeah, I would just make sure you listen, and do believe in yourself. I've listened to so many podcasts, and a lot of them where they're like, if I can do it, anyone can do it. And I think, yeah, but I can't. Like, I would just not believe in myself. I'd still be like, yeah, but they're going to be stronger than me. Like, I'm really sensitive. I'm really sensitive on my body. Like, any twinge or anything, I really feel it. I did that through school. The whole process, I just squeezed a comb and put a TENS machine on, which I didn't realize wasn't turned up enough to even do anything. My partner said, Mary, it wasn't even like basically on. So it was just like in my mind, it was helping, I suppose. But like, I'm a very physically sensitive person, an emotionally sensitive person, but I managed to go through that whole process without any kind of pain relief or anything like that, just because I understood it,
yeah.
and I trusted it. So
Mm.
yeah, I think
Thank you so much,
that's
Mary. It's been an honor and
thank
a
you.
pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thank you. And I really appreciate all your sharings and offering the space for women to share. It's a really beautiful healing thing. It's such a gift. So thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you love this podcast, then please consider sharing it, leave a review, or make a contribution on our Patreon page. And if you want to connect on social media, then find the podcast on Instagram as The Natural Birth Podcast. Thank you for listening.